Welcome to the deep dive.
Oh,
Today, we're going to be exploring a book called The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan.
okay.
And this book is all about, well, it claims to have uncovered the surprisingly simple truth behind extraordinary results.
Interesting.
And we're going to be diving deep into its key concepts and hopefully extract some actionable insights that you can apply to your own life.
Sounds good.
So, you know how everyone always says we all have the same 24 hours in a day,
Right.
but then why do some people achieve so much more with that same 24 hours? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've often wondered that myself.
That's exactly what we're going to be looking into today.
Okay, cool.
So Keller and Papasan, the authors, they argue that it's not about working harder or even smarter necessarily.
Hmm.
They say it's all about focusing on the right thing.
Okay.
They call it your one thing, and then pursuing that one thing with just relentless consistency.
Interesting. So how do you figure out what that one thing is?
Well, they actually start by debunking 6 common, I guess you could call them lies,
Mm-hmm.
that we often believe about success.
Okay.
And they say, these hold us back from achieving our full potential.
Like what kinds of lies?
So the first one they tackle is the belief that everything matters equally.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a problem.
Right. Like, how can we possibly even begin to prioritize when everything feels so important?
Exactly. Everything seems urgent. It's like you're constantly putting out fires,
Yeah.
never really getting ahead.
And that's where they bring in the Pareto principle.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I think so. Isn't that the 80-20 rule?
Exactly. It's also known as the 80-20 rule.
Right. I remember now.
It was originally observed in economics, I think.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
And it suggests that roughly 80% of your results come from just 20% of your efforts.
Okay.
So basically, it's not that everything is equally important. It's about recognizing that not every task on your to-do list carries the same weight.
Right. Some tasks are definitely more valuable than others.
Exactly.
But how do you determine which ones are the 20%?
Well, it's the art of it. Right.
Yeah.
It's learning to prioritize ruthlessly.
Okay.
Focusing on those vital few tasks that will really move the needle,
Right.
rather than getting bogged down in all the trivial many.
Yeah, I can definitely see how focusing on the wrong things can really hold you back.
They have this great analogy in the book. They say it's like trying to carry too many baskets at once.
Okay.
You're bound to drop a few eggs along the way.
Right. That makes sense.
Instead, you should focus on just the basket that holds the most valuable eggs.
Okay.
That 20% that's going to drive 80% of your results.
So it's about prioritizing quality over quantity,
Exactly.
focusing on the things that really matter.
And this principle applies to pretty much every area of life. It's not just about work.
Oh, interesting.
It's about your health,
Okay.
your relationships,
Makes sense.
even just your overall well-being.
Right. So it's like identifying those key activities that will have the biggest impact on all aspects of your life.
Exactly. Now, the next lie they tackle is multitasking,
Okay.
which I think it's like an epidemic these days.
Right. Everyone expects you to be able to juggle like a million things at once.
Exactly. But the book claims that it's not just inefficient, it's actually counterproductive.
Oh, wow. Really?
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've definitely felt that way sometimes. Like I'm trying to do too many things at once and nothing gets done well.
Right.
But I guess I always thought that was just me being bad at multitasking.
Well, apparently the research on multitasking is actually quite clear.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we try to do multiple things at once, our brains, they're constantly task switching.
Task switching.
Yeah. So it's constantly like shifting gears between all these different activities.
Okay.
And this constant shifting, it slows us down and it increases our error rate.
So it's actually making us less productive, not more. Huh. That's interesting.
It's like they have this analogy in the book. It's like trying to drive a car while constantly slamming on the brakes.
Oh, yeah.
You're not going to get very far, and you're probably going to end up in an accident.
Right. That's a good analogy.
And actually, the book mentions a study by Dr. David Meyer, I think.
Okay.
And he found that task switching can increase the time it takes to complete tasks by as much as, like, double sometimes.
Oh, that's significant.
Especially for, like, more complex tasks.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you're constantly having to switch your focus, it's going to take you longer to get things done.
Exactly. So even though we might feel like we're getting more done when we're multitasking, we're really not.
Right. It's just an illusion of productivity.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So The key is to learn to single task,
Okay.
to focus on one thing at a time.
Right.
Give it your undivided attention.
And do it well.
Exactly. So the next lie the book tackles is the belief that success requires constant discipline. Now, this one I think is super daunting for a lot of people.
Yeah, I can see why. It sounds exhausting.
It does. It's kind of discouraging.
Like you're constantly having to push yourself.
Right. And never really being able to relax or enjoy the process.
Exactly.
So their argument is that you don't need to be disciplined all the time. That's kind of a myth that can actually lead to burnout and self-sabotage.
Oh, interesting. So what do they suggest instead?
They say to aim for strategic discipline.
Strategic discipline.
Yeah, so it's about using your willpower wisely, not just constantly,
Okay.
but focusing it on building those key habits that will just automatically propel you towards your goals.
So it's like creating a system that supports your success rather than relying solely on willpower,
Precisely.
which can be really hard to maintain, you know?
Oh yeah, willpower is definitely a finite resource.
Exactly.
And they have another great analogy for this one too.
Okay, what is it?
They say it's like setting your success on autopilot.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so once you've established those right habits, it becomes almost effortless.
Right, it just becomes part of your routine.
And then it frees up your mental energy for other things.
That makes a lot of sense.
And they use the example of Michael Phelps.
Oh, the swimmer.
Yes, the Olympic swimmer. He actually has ADHD.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And he was, as a kid, he was told that he would never be able to focus.
Wow.
But he was able to, with the help of his coach, to channel his energy into swimming.
Oh, that's amazing.
And through this consistent, focused practice, it became like swimming became a habit.
Okay.
And it became a source of comfort and focus for him.
Right.
And obviously propelled him to become one of the most decorated Olympians of all time.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It really highlights like the transformative power of habits.
It really does. So it's not about being disciplined all the time. It's about focusing your discipline on building the right habits.
Exactly.
And then those habits can help you overcome even seemingly impossible challenges and achieve extraordinary results.
And they even give like a time frame.
Oh, really? What is it?
They say an average of 66 days is kind of the sweet spot for establishing a new habit.
66 days.
Yeah, but of course some habits might take longer, right?
Yeah, depending on how complex they are, I guess.
Right. But it's just encouraging to know that there's like a light at the end of the tunnel.
Definitely. It makes it seem more achievable, knowing that there's a time frame for establishing those habits.
And the fourth lie that the book debunks is the belief that willpower is always on will call.
Oh, yeah. I struggle with that one a lot.
Right. Me too. I think we all do. It's just, you assume that you can just summon willpower whenever you need it.
Right, like it's an endless supply.
Yeah. But their argument is that willpower is a finite resource,
Oh, okay.
like a muscle that gets tired after repeated use.
That makes sense. Like if you're constantly having to make decisions and resist temptations, it's going to drain you eventually.
Exactly. And so the more decisions we make, the more temptations we resist, the more depleted our willpower reserves become.
Right. And then when our willpower is low, we're more likely to make bad choices and give in to those temptations.
Exactly. It's like trying to run a marathon without any training or fuel.
Yeah.
You're going to hit a wall at some point.
Definitely.
So their advice is that, willpower, it's crucial to manage it strategically.
Okay, how do you do that?
Well, they suggest, like, understanding your willpower rhythms.
Willpower rhythm.
Yeah, like, identify when your willpower is naturally high and low,
Okay.
and then plan your day accordingly.
So, like, tackle your most important tasks when your willpower is strong,
Exactly.
and then save the less demanding tasks for later in the day when you're feeling more depleted.
Exactly. So it's about working with your natural energy levels, not against them.
Right.
And instead of relying on willpower alone, create a system that supports your success.
Okay.
So minimize the number of decisions you have to make throughout the day.
Right. So you're not constantly having to rely on your willpower to make those decisions.
Exactly.
And that would help you avoid those decision fatigue moments.
Exactly. So it's about optimizing your environment and
Yeah.
your schedule to maximize your willpower and just minimize the potential for distractions and temptations.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's not about trying to force yourself to be disciplined all the time, but rather about setting yourself up for success by creating an environment that supports your goals.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's the next lie?
Well, the next one is the myth of a balanced life.
Oh, yeah. balance. Everyone's always talking about work-life balance.
Right, line number 5. It's like this ideal that so many of us strive for, but, the book argues that this perfectly balanced life, it's kind of an unattainable ideal.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like you're always trying to juggle all these different areas of your life: work, family, friends, hobbies.
It's like we're constantly teetering on a tightrope, trying to keep all the balls in the air.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're always worried about dropping one.
Right. So what's the alternative? How can we manage all these responsibilities without feeling overwhelmed and, just pulled in a million directions?
Well, instead of striving for perfect balance, which is impossible, they suggest focusing on counterbalancing.
Corner balancing. Okay.
Yeah, so it's acknowledging that different areas of our lives are going to require different levels of attention at different times.
Okay.
Sometimes work is going to take center stage, while other times family or personal pursuits are going to need to be the priority.
Right.
It's about intentionally shifting your focus as needed.
Yeah.
So it's not about trying to maintain this impossible equilibrium. It's more about being intentional about how we allocate our time and energy, recognizing that certain things are going to naturally take precedence at different points in our lives.
That's a great way to put it. Think of it like a seesaw.
Okay.
It's about finding a dynamic balance, constantly adjusting to keep things relatively stable, rather than trying to find a static point of perfect equilibrium.
Right, right. Because life is always changing.
Right. Your priorities are going to shift, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's about being flexible and adaptable.
They actually tell this story in the book about a woman whose parents, they were both teachers,
Okay.
and they delayed a lot of their enjoyment of life until retirement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like they saved meticulously. They forewent travel and hobbies because they were like, we're going to make up for it later.
Yeah, I've heard that mindset before.
But sadly, the mother developed cancer and passed away before reaching retirement.
Oh,
And the
no.
father never felt comfortable spending the money that they had saved together.
That's heartbreaking. It's a reminder that we shouldn't put off living our lives until some imaginary future date.
Exactly. So counterbalancing is not just about balancing work and life. It's also about balancing enjoyment with, delayed gratification.
Yeah, you got to find ways to incorporate joy and meaning into your life today while still working towards those long-term goals.
Right, because we don't know what tomorrow holds. It's about recognizing that life is a journey, not just a destination.
I love that. It's about savoring the journey along the way.
And this actually ties in with the 6th and final lie that the book debunks, which is the idea that big is bad.
Big is bad. Okay.
Yeah, like I think a lot of us have been conditioned to believe that we shouldn't dream too big.
Mhm.
Play it safe, stay within our comfort zones.
Yeah, don't rock the boat.
Right. But this book encourages us to embrace big thinking.
Oh, I like that. So what's their reasoning behind that?
Well, they argue that thinking big is actually crucial to achieving those extraordinary results.
Okay.
They point out that our actions are guided by our thoughts.
Right. If you believe you can achieve something, you're more likely to take action towards it.
Exactly. So if we want to achieve big things, we need to first cultivate big thoughts.
That makes sense. So it's about challenging our limiting beliefs and expanding our vision of what's possible.
Exactly. It's about believing in your potential and not letting fear or self-doubt hold you back.
Right. Like, what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough?
And they actually delve into the research of Carol Dweck, who's a Stanford psychologist.
Okay.
And she's done a lot of research on mindsets.
Mindsets. Yeah.
And her work shows that people with a growth mindset, so those who embrace challenges and see failure as an opportunity to learn, those people are more likely to achieve their goals.
That makes sense. If you're not afraid to fail, you're more likely to take risks and try new things.
And thinking big is a key part of cultivating that growth mindset.
Right. It's about embracing a mindset of possibility.
Yeah, believing that we can learn and grow and achieve anything that we set our minds to.
I love that. So it's not about being reckless or unrealistic, but about believing in your potential and striving for something great.
Exactly. And they also use the example of Bill Gates, whose passion for computers and, his big thinking led him to co-found Microsoft.
Right. A company that revolutionized the tech industry.
Exactly.
It's a great example of how audacious goals can lead to extraordinary results when combined with a willingness to take bold action.
Exactly. So those are the 6 lies.
Okay, so now that we've debunked the 6 lies, what's next? How do we actually start putting these principles into practice?
Right. How do we achieve those extraordinary results?
Yeah.
Well, that's where the second part of the book comes in.
Okay.
It's called The Truth, the simple path to productivity.
The simple path to productivity.
Okay. And at the heart of this path lies what they call the focusing question.
The focusing question. Interesting. What is that?
It sounds kind of simple, but it's actually really powerful
Okay.
for setting priorities and guiding our actions.
So how does it work?
Well, the question is, what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary?
Wow, that's a great question. It really makes you think.
It does, right? It forces you to think deeply about your priorities
Hmm.
and identify the most impactful action that you can take.
Right, so it's not just about doing a lot of things, but about doing the right thing.
Exactly. And the beauty of this question is that it can be applied to any area of your life.
Oh, okay. So you can ask it about your overall life purpose,
Yep.
a specific project you're working on, even just your daily tasks.
Exactly. It's about constantly realigning your actions with your most important goals.
That's a great way to stay focused and make sure you're not getting sidetracked.
Exactly. And they emphasize that you should ask this question regularly. It's not just a one-time exercise, it's an ongoing process.
Right, it's about making the focusing question a habit, like a lens through which you view your decisions and actions.
Exactly. And to help you with this, they provide this step-by-step process called goal setting to the now.
Goal setting to the now. Okay, I'm intrigued. How does that work?
Well, it starts by identifying your someday goal.
Someday goal.
Yeah, so that's like the big audacious goal that you want to achieve in the future. So for example, let's say your someday goal is to run a marathon.
Okay, run a marathon.
Where do you go from there?
Well, I guess you'd have to start training, right? Maybe find a running group or a coach.
Right, so you'd ask yourself, what's the one thing I can do in the next 5 years to achieve that goal?
Okay, so maybe it's finding a coach or joining a running group or even just committing to running 3 times a week.
Exactly. So you've broken down that big, overwhelming goal into a more manageable, like 5-year chunk.
Right.
And then what?
Well, I guess you keep breaking it down, right?
Exactly.
So what's the one thing you can do this year, this month, this week? And then finally, what's the one thing you can do today?
Exactly. So you're creating this chain of actionable steps
Okay.
that connect your present moment with your future aspirations.
I see. So it's about creating a clear path from where you are now to where you want to be,
Exactly.
focusing on taking small, consistent steps each day.
And research has shown that our brains are actually more likely to take action when faced with smaller, achievable tasks.
Oh, that's interesting. So goal setting to the now helps you avoid feeling overwhelmed by breaking down a large goal into bite-sized pieces.
Exactly. And it creates momentum, so you're more likely to succeed.
That's a great technique.
And they actually share a story in the book about how this technique helps someone clarify their own priorities.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Keller describes this scenario where people would often ask him for advice. You know, what should I be doing to be successful?
Okay.
And instead of giving them a direct answer, he would guide them through this goal setting to the now process.
Oh, that's smart.
And by the end, they usually figured out their own one thing.
Wow, that's a great example of how sometimes the answers are already within us.
Exactly. It's just a matter of asking the right questions to unlock that inner wisdom.
I love that. So once you've identified your one thing, what's next?
Well, they also stress the importance of writing down your goals.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that before. Why is that so important?
Well, they say it not only solidifies them in your mind, but it also makes you more likely to take action.
Okay, so it's like making a commitment to yourself.
Exactly. It's like creating a tangible reminder of what you're committed to achieving, a contract with yourself,
Right. And it helps you stay accountable.
and stay focused. So they encourage us to not only write down our goals, but to review them regularly.
Okay, so keep them front and center in your awareness.
Yeah, just consistently reminding yourself of your why.
And staying motivated on your journey toward achieving those dreams.
Exactly. So now that we've identified our one thing, that priority that will have the greatest impact on our lives, how do we actually make time for it? Amidst the whirlwind of all those daily demands.
Right. It's easy to say focus on your one thing, but how do you actually do that when you have a million other things going on?
Well, that's where time blocking comes in.
Time blocking.
Yeah, it's a technique that takes center stage in part 3 of the book, Extraordinary Results.
Extraordinary results through time blocking. Okay.
Mhm. And it's all about making your one thing non-negotiable.
So you're basically scheduling time for your one thing and then protecting that time fiercely.
Exactly. And they have some key principles for effective time blocking.
Okay. Tell me more about that.
Well, one of the most important things is that successful people don't try to fit their one thing into their existing schedules.
Oh, interesting. So what do they do?
They schedule their day around their one thing.
So their one thing is like the anchor of their day.
Exactly. They make it the cornerstone of their day.
Okay. And how do they do that?
Well, they recommend blocking out a specific time each day, ideally in the morning.
Okay. When your willpower and energy levels are highest.
Right. And you dedicate that time solely to working on your one thing. So think of it like a doctor's appointment.
A doctor's appointment.
Yeah, it's a commitment that you can't afford to miss.
Oh, I like that analogy. It really drives home the importance of treating your one thing as a non-negotiable appointment with yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then the question is, how do we protect that time from all the distractions and interruptions?
Yeah, that's the tough part. There's always something vying for your attention.
Well, that's where creating a distraction-free environment comes in.
Okay. Like turning off your phone?
Yep, turning off notifications, putting your phone on, do not disturb,
Okay.
letting others know that you're unavailable.
So you can really focus on your one thing.
Exactly. Create this sacred space for focused work.
I like that idea. It's like creating a bubble of focus
Exactly.
where you can really get into a flow state.
They also talk about the concept of maker's schedule versus manager's schedule.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. It's the idea that people who need to focus on deep work, like writers and programmers, they need large chunks of uninterrupted time.
Exactly, to get into that flow state.
Right.
While managers typically operate on a schedule of meetings and shorter bursts of activity.
Yeah, and when those two schedules clash, it can be really disruptive.
Exactly. So it's important to understand those different types of work and schedule accordingly.
Yeah, you have to protect your time blocks, set clear boundaries.
Exactly. And they emphasize consistency. This is not a one-time thing. It's a daily practice.
Right. You have to make time blocking a habit, integrate it into your routine.
They suggest using visual reminders, like a calendar or a whiteboard,
Okay.
just to keep those time blocks, like front and center in your awareness.
Right. It's a visual contract with yourself.
Exactly. And they even share this fun little technique for maintaining consistency called the Seinfeld strategy.
The Seinfeld strategy.
Yeah. It's inspired by comedian Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh, okay. Tell me about it.
It's really simple. You basically just mark an X on a calendar for each day that you successfully complete your time block.
Oh, that's a great idea. It's like a game. You're challenging yourself to keep the chain of X's going.
Exactly. And as that chain grows, it becomes this visual representation of your progress.
And your commitment.
Exactly. So it helps build momentum.
Yeah, it would make it harder to skip a day.
Okay, so we've talked about time blocking, creating a distraction-free environment. But what about those times when we inevitably face distractions?
Yeah.
Or setbacks?
Yeah, things don't always go according to plan.
Right. So how do we stay on track with our one thing, even when things get tough?
That's a good question. It's easy to get discouraged when things aren't going your way.
Well, that's where the accountability cycle comes in.
Accountability cycle.
Yeah. It emphasizes taking ownership of your actions and your results
Okay.
and using feedback to continually improve your performance.
So it's about being responsible for your choices and their outcomes.
Exactly. But also being open to feedback,
Right, so you can learn and grow.
both positive and negative feedback.
Makes sense.
And they suggest finding an accountability partner.
An accountability partner.
Yeah, someone who can provide honest feedback and support.
Okay. So someone who will hold you accountable for your commitments. That's a great idea. I think having someone to check in with would definitely provide extra motivation and support, especially when you're feeling discouraged or tempted to give up.
Exactly. So who would be a good accountability partner?
What could be a friend, a colleague, a family member, someone who shares similar goals and is committed to helping you succeed.
Right. Doesn't have to be like a coach or a mentor, although those are great options too.
Yeah, the key is to find someone you trust and respect, and who will be honest with you.
Right, and who will both support you but also challenge you.
Exactly. Accountability is a powerful tool for growth, and having that support system can make all the difference.
And the book also emphasizes the importance of saying no.
Oh, yeah. Saying no is so hard.
It is, especially for people pleasers.
Yeah, I'm definitely a people pleaser. I hate letting people down.
Right, but it's so important to set boundaries and protect your time and energy.
I know, I know. It's just hard to do sometimes. So what advice do they give on how to say no effectively?
Well, one suggestion is to offer alternative solutions or suggest other resources.
Okay.
So, for example, if someone asks you to take on a project that doesn't align with your priorities, you could suggest someone else who might be a better fit.
Right. So you're not just saying no flat out. You're offering a helpful alternative.
Exactly. It's about being helpful but firm.
Okay, that makes sense.
and not letting guilt or obligation derail your focus.
Right. You have to prioritize your own goals.
And remember that saying no to some things allows you to say yes to the things that really matter.
That's a great way to think about it. So it's not about being selfish, it's about being strategic.
Exactly. It's about making conscious choices about how you spend your time and energy.
And the book highlights the example of Steve Jobs, who was famously selective about the projects he pursued at Apple.
Oh, yeah.
He knew that saying no to the wrong things was essential to saying yes to the right things, which ultimately led to Apple becoming one of the most innovative companies in the world.
That's a great example. It shows how saying no can actually be a catalyst for innovation and success.
Definitely. It's about focusing on what you're truly passionate about and what you believe in.
The book also talks about the importance of your environment.
Environment.
Yeah, like both the people you surround yourself with
Okay.
and your physical workspace.
Oh, interesting. So, how does our environment affect our ability to achieve our one thing?
Well, they argue that our environment can either support or sabotage our productivity and well-being.
Okay.
So it's essential to surround yourself with people who inspire you, who challenge you, and hold you accountable for your goals.
Yeah, people who lift you up and push you to be your best self. It's
Exactly.
like creating a success
Yeah, and I
ecosystem,
love that.
a network of support and inspiration that fuels your growth.
And our physical environment plays a crucial role too. Like a cluttered workspace, it can lead to a cluttered mind.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that. When my desk is messy, it's hard to focus.
Right. While a clean and organized space can promote focus and clarity.
So it's about creating a space that reflects your commitment to your one thing.
Exactly. A space that is both functional and inspiring.
Hmm.
It's about making your environment a partner in your success.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's about aligning all aspects of your life with your one thing,
Mm.
your purpose, your priorities, your actions, your environment.
Even your relationships.
Exactly. It's about creating a life of intention and focus, a life that's aligned with your deepest values and aspirations.
I love that. It feels like we've covered a lot, but there's still more to unpack.
Right.
This last part of the book is called The Journey, and it focuses on like actually putting all these principles into practice
Okay.
and embracing the whole process of achieving extraordinary results.
Makes sense.
It feels like it shifts from just reaching the destination to really enjoying the ride along the way.
Yeah, that's a good point. The book reminds us that the journey to any goal, like writing a book, starting a business, running a marathon, it always starts with a single step.
Right.
And that step, as we discussed, is identifying your one thing,
Hmm.
that priority that'll have the most significant impact on your progress.
It's so easy to just get caught up in like the enormity of a goal and feel overwhelmed before you even start.
I know, right? It can be paralyzing.
But like they say, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly. And they use a great analogy to illustrate this point,
Oh, yeah? What's that?
the domino effect.
Oh, the domino effect. Okay.
Yeah, it's the idea that these small, consistent actions can actually create this chain reaction, leading to bigger and bigger achievements over time.
Like that experiment where a single domino can knock over millions of others
Yeah.
and just release a huge amount of energy.
Exactly. That's a great visual. And the book emphasizes that extraordinary success is not usually achieved through some grand gesture, you know?
Right.
It's built sequentially, one focused action at a time, like a series of dominoes falling one after another.
I see. Okay.
And the key is to identify that right domino, the one thing that'll trigger the next level of success.
So rather than trying to do everything at once, it's about prioritizing our actions and like creating that sequence
Yes,
that's going to lead to that domino effect and propel us toward our ultimate goal.
precisely.
I think that's so valuable, especially in today's world. Everything's so fast-paced and we're just bombarded with all these demands on our time.
Absolutely. The book talks about how this principle also applies to building a successful business. They share a quote from Andrew Carnegie,
Oh, Andrew Carnegie. Okay.
who said the secret to success is to concentrate your energy, thought, and capital exclusively upon the business in which you are engaged.
So going all in on your one thing.
Yes. Becoming an expert in your chosen field and resisting the temptation to get sidetracked by those shiny objects or fleeting opportunities.
Right. Focusing your energy like a laser beam on that one point.
Exactly. Carnegie even cautioned against that common advice, don't put all your eggs in one basket. He said, put all your eggs in one basket and then watch that basket very carefully.
Ooh, wow. Yeah.
It's about having that courage to commit fully to your one thing, believing in your vision, and giving it your unwavering attention.
That's a bold perspective. So
Yeah.
trusting your instincts, having that confidence to maybe go against conventional wisdom and just bet on yourself.
Exactly. The book also uses the example of the Star Wars franchise
Star Wars, okay.
to illustrate this idea of identifying the one thing and building everything else around it.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So they ask, what's the one thing for Star Wars? Is it the movies or the merchandise?
Hmm. That's a good question.
And while both are obviously important, they argue that the movies are the one thing.
Okay.
Because the movies make the merchandise and everything else possible, the movies are the foundation.
Well, yeah.
The whole Star Wars universe is built upon those films. So it's about identifying that core element, the heart of your endeavor, that thing that generates everything else. And this principle applies to any business, creative project, or even just a personal goal.
Right. Recognizing that everything kind of flows from that single source.
Yes, and that source is your one thing.
So the one thing concludes with this really nice story that I think captures the essence of the whole book.
Yeah.
It's the story of the boy and the puzzle.
Oh, yes, I love that story.
Should you share it with our listeners?
Of course. So it's a story about a father who promises to spend the entire day with his young son. But he gets caught up in his morning routine, as we all do. And to buy himself some time, he tears a picture of the world from a magazine into tiny pieces,
Oh, wow.
creating this complex puzzle for his son to put back together. He thinks this will keep his son busy for hours.
Yeah, I can only imagine trying to put that back together.
But to his astonishment, the son completes the puzzle in just minutes. Yes, the boy had dropped a piece on the floor, and when he looked up at the glass table, he noticed there was a picture of a man on the other side.
Oh, he realized that by focusing on the image of the man, the world would fall into place.
Exactly. And that's the profound message of the story. When we focus on putting ourselves together, on identifying our one thing and aligning our lives with it, everything else naturally falls into place.
Such a powerful metaphor. It's like our outer world is a reflection of our inner world, right?
Right.
When we cultivate that clarity, that focus, that purpose within, it manifests in our external reality.
Exactly. And that's the transformative power of the one thing. It's not just about achieving goals. It's about living a life of purpose, meaning, and extraordinary results.
It's about that journey, not just the destination.
Right. And the book doesn't explicitly say this, but perhaps the biggest takeaway is that it's not about doing only one thing for the rest of your life. It's about understanding the power of sequencing. What's the one thing you need to get right before you can achieve your ultimate goal? That's something worth thinking about as you embark on your own journey.
It's about recognizing that success is often built upon a foundation of smaller achievements, all interconnected, like a series of dominoes leading to that grand finale.
I like that.
And if anyone wants to explore these concepts further, be sure to check out the1t.com. There's a ton of resources there, articles, videos, and you can even find a link to buy the book itself.
Great. Thanks for sharing that.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the one thing. I hope you've learned some valuable insights and got some practical tools you can use. Remember, extraordinary results are within your reach, one focused action at a time.
That's right. It's all about taking those small steps consistently.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep diving deep.